Hey there, folks. Welcome back to another brand spanking new episode of Unfinished Business Television. This will be a movie review show. I am your host, Jeff Gallashaw at Unfinished B2 on social media. And with me, as always, is my co host, Andre Joseph of AJ Epics Productions.
In the immortal words of a great actor, I'm your Huckleberry.
Yes, that is the late great Val Kilmer, who just recently left us, unfortunately. But he leaves behind great memories, many big screen roles, and many just stories from co-stars and people who knew him, and a beautiful family. So, our first movie we're going to talk about today is the documentary Superman, the Christopher Reeve story. I think obviously the title tells you what this documentary is about. Christopher Reeve and his life, career, his advocacy, and also life after his accident that left him pretty much paralyzed from the neck down. But even after that, he was still doing great things and trying to help others with the same disability, even though his time was cut short. His dream was to be able to walk again, and do things on his own. And I mean, it's not like you can. This is one of the things that's hard to critique documentary. It's not like you're gonna really be like, "Oh, it was so bad," It's like this is a celebration of a man's life, so you can't sit here and be like, "Well, I didn't like it, so I didn't like the filmmaking." I mean, it has a lot of stuff I didn't know about Christopher Reeve. Like his theatrical background. I knew about his friendship with Robin Williams, but just certain roles other than Superman, like the TV movie where he actually played a paraplegic before it actually happened to him. I mean, the film offers great insight. He was obviously a well-loved man. And I think the most haunting part is I think Glenn Close, who said that she believes that if Christopher Reeve hadn't passed away, Robin Williams would still be with us. So that was like the most like wow moment of the documentary. Obviously, I liked it. I love the first two Superman movies. I have a special place in my heart for three. Four, yeah, it happened. So, but I liked him in movies such as Street Smart, even the bad Switching Channels, where at least he was trying. I mean, come on. You're working with Burt Reynolds and Kathleen Turner playing exes, basically a remake of His Girl Friday. So, I mean, and not to mention when you sign up for the project, Michael Caine's supposed to start, and then when you get on the project, it's Burt Reynolds. So I can understand why that might be disappointing. But he just seemed like a good. He like if he ever made action film, he would be the last Boy Scout. Is how I would describe him. He's right up there with Luke Perry. Obviously Christopher Reeve's more iconic though. But I know you're the one who saw it first and put it. I believe wasn't it on your top 10 list?
I think it was in my honorable mentions.
Oh, okay. So, what was your opinion of the documentary? But like, did it have things that you didn't even know about Christopher Reeve?
Well, I'll set the personal context. I actually watched this movie right after the recent election when I was depressed, like half the country was. And I watched this thing overnight and I really did feel inspired by it. And obviously I was already inspired by his story, but just to see the journey, the family, the whole history, his love for the craft of acting, and how he just didn't give up even in such a weak state, I just really felt like this is what I needed. I needed that thick backbone to get back up on my feet and say, you know what, I'm going to get through the next day and the next day after. And so, yeah, like you said, there's a lot that I didn't know. I wish they had dived a little bit more into some of the non-Superman movies because, Street Smart, I think, was highly underrated, even if Morgan Freeman kind of overshadowed his performance. Even some of the TV movies he did where he was really trying to strip the Superman persona away, like the one where he played the pedophile, Bump in the Night with Meredith Baxter. I mean, that was like a bold thing to do. The Seawolf with Charles Bronson, having those guys together. So I would have liked to see more of that. And the thing I also didn't think about that I was kind of glad that they talked about in the documentary was that there was even a little bit of a backlash when he became that advocate for the disabled, and people just felt he was getting too far into it, that he was doing all these efforts that at times felt selfish, and all he was trying to do was just get back and walk again, but not really thinking about people that are just they're disabled, but they just grow used to it and they embrace it. So there was like that sort of counterpoint that they weren't afraid to shy from. And I don't agree with it, but that's what they had to do. But overall, it was just inspiring. The guy was beloved. I agree. Robin Williams would still be alive if he hadn't died. And I just think that it was something I highly recommend, whether you're a Superman fan or not. It's something that I think is worthwhile, especially when you're down.
Now, my question, I questioned, well, I mean, Glenn Close obviously was close to the both of them, but I guess my question is, do you think that maybe when Robin Williams unfortunately passed away, do you think that maybe he was a kind of afraid to end up a little like Christopher Reeve, like I guess more being known for, I guess, kind of your advocacy or your accident or like the slowing down process of what you were able to do more than maybe your legacy from before? And
This is just my theory, but I know that he was diagnosed, I believe, with early Parkinson's, right? Robin Williams.
yes. Mm.
So I think he was already sort of foreshadowing his own decline, that he didn't want to suddenly be stopped by just being mentally disabled or physically disabled, just like Chris. And just mood swings probably took over, because keep in mind he was already kind of in a depressed state with the way his career was going, that he had to revert back to television. He wasn't a movie star like he once was. And, I mean, we never know what goes on with people when they're in their homes, when they're away from the public spotlight. So it may have been the case where maybe he still just put on that brave face, not telling people about his diagnosis. And if somebody as close as Chris was around, I think he would have kept him balanced, whether he was disabled or not. I think he still would have given him some kind of encouragement to live on.
Okay. So that is Superman, the Christopher Reeve story. We both recommend. I Are you giving it a high recommendation?
High recommendation for me.
Okay, I give it a recommendation. I think if you're a fan, you'll really enjoy it, or if you know who Christopher Reeve is, it'll be an interesting watch. But I'm just gonna give it a recommendation. But it is very inspiring. Next, another documentary. This one came out last year in theaters, Piece by Piece, about Pharrell Williams of NERD fame, and obviously his own solo musical career, and now clothing designing career and entrepreneur. And I guess the kind of gimmick here is not only is it a talking head documentary, but it's also done all with Legos. I guess to set it apart from other, and since his production company is called I Am Other, he had to do something completely different. And I like that the documentary covers all aspects of his life and career. And obviously, the interviews are the real people, but then they're just animated by Legos. So, we see all the collaborations, even with his ex partner, Chad Hugo of NERD, Snoop Dogg, Gwen Stefani, plenty of people, cameo in this, as well as we get to see his home life. So you can kind of see his children without him actually having to show photos of it. And I'll admit, it is a fun ride and very interesting. I'm sure I enjoyed this more than if it had been just a straight up regular documentary. It manages to stay entertaining. I just feel sorry for any kids who go to see this, expecting like, oh, this is going to be fun. And it's like, okay, you're going to watch a bunch of interviews. But there is action in between and some impressive, uh, I guess, graphics. But I don't know. I mean, I recommend the film, but my problem is I don't know if it was necessary for the director to animate himself in there. And I kind of like it when documentaries don't have the documentary filmmaker in it. I don't mind hearing your voice now and then when asking questions, but I don't think you should be a character in the documentary because it seems a little more self-serving to me. Like I can understand maybe more of a Michael Moore because he's doing man on the street interviews, he's advocating for things, but there just seems to be, I would say, from 2000 on, this thing of the narcissistic director sometimes by putting themselves in the middle of a documentary that's supposed to be about a subject. That was my only problem with the film. But other than that, I like it. I recommend it. If you're a fan, I think you'll definitely love it. And obviously, a guy has a great soundtrack of all his hits from over the years. So you'll be bopping, to it afterwards. And since, again, you say you don't really listen to a lot of modern music, would you say some of these songs are music like new to you? And
None of the music was actually new, but what I will say was shocking to me was that I didn't realize how many songs he had his handprints on before he really took out blew up as a solo artist. I mean, my cousin had told me about the Neptunes back when we were in high school, and I didn't really, again, I'm not big when it comes to modern day pop music outside of a few artists, but I just was like, wow, that, he worked with Gwen Stefani, he worked with Justin Timberlake, he worked, I mean, obviously I knew about Jay-Z and Snoop Dogg. I like, by the way, how they handled dealing around Snoop's, weed obsession, what was it, the magic gas or whatever it was. I thought that was cute. I really like that part. Yeah, so it was eye-opening for me to see that whole history because it's almost for some reason I feel like he only became a star like in the last decade, and it's just mind-boggling to me. Even though like I've heard the name, I've heard the Neptunes, but just never put two and three all together. So it really was like a good learning experience for myself to watch this film, and I love the concept with the Legos, doing it as a documentary. It doesn't really truly get dark, right? I mean, he's
Mhm.
taps into a little bit of social consciousness towards the end and his own plight in the industry where he found success, but, didn't have the courage to break out on his own and then eventually found the courage. But then it was like, oh, I'm just doing the same thing. I'm not really inspired. And then when he did find inspiration from family, then it became like he was on another level. Like now he was mainstream. So I thought it was charming, it was fun, it was definitely, like I said, a learning experience, and I won't give it a high recommendation, but I will definitely give it a recommendation because I really did thoroughly enjoy it. Wasn't crazy about the new song at the end, though, that was I he shouldn't do that other biopic that's supposed to be live action, it's like, why even bother? I think this is perfect as is.
Well, I mean, I think the thing was, I agree with you. I definitely give it a recommendation. But I think the other thing was semi autobiographical. And the thing was, they filmed the whole movie. And then in the editing process, they decided, nah, let's just junk it, because it didn't come out, I guess, to his vision nor the director's vision. But, my thing is, you can still put it out, like you spent all that money, time, and work. You can disavow it afterwards, but I'd like to see it. I mean, like I said, it's more of a 1960s, 70s set romantic story, so I would have liked to have seen it. It was supposed to come out this year, but unfortunately, maybe in the future, they'll decide to do something with it. But I really was hoping to see it because, especially since he kept talking about Atlantis throughout this documentary, and I guess that was kind of a theme of that film. Um, but for right now, you guys can definitely check out Piece by Piece. Again, if you're a fan, I think you'll enjoy it more than anything. But if you don't know that much about Pharrell, it's like, oh, well, now you get to finally learn like his life story and you know, all the, I guess, kind of behind the scenes of many of his hits. So our next film we're going to talk about is Nosferatu, the remake. by Robert Eggers. Um, it stars Bill Skarsgård as Count Orlok, Lily Rose Depp, Willem Dafoe, Nicholas Hoult, Aaron Taylor Johnson, and it has burst many, many memes at this point. Um, Now, I will admit, when I saw this in theaters under not the best circumstances, I was trying to see it before the year end, so I saw it on its second weekend at Alamo Drafthouse before the strike, and it was pretty much sold out. So I was forced to sit with people on either side of me, and so I already was not in the best of moods there because I like a half full audience at most. That's why I always go to early shows and matinees. And here I am, I have two people on the side of me. One side, a couple came in like basically during the credits, and then are like trying to decide during the opening scenes what to order. So I have that going on one side. And then the guy next to me had a certain smell to him. So I'm having to deal with that. Plus, I've ordered food. That is why throughout the movie, I was drinking straight margaritas. So trying to deal with that. Now, having said that, I enjoyed the film for what it was, but I have never seen a film that is so horny in my lifetime. And I lived through and saw the erotic thrillers of the 90s. So, but this film is just a long thing. It should have been Indecent Proposal, the supernatural version. Because you're just sitting through this film, and Orlok is like, yo, man, I'm using you to get to your woman. She was promised to me. And even though I'm old and decrepit, let me just get some before I pass on. That seems to be his one mission. Like, he's causing all this heartache and pain just so he could get that one girl. And then, everybody sees this as, oh, that's so romantic. I felt like this was the Anna Nicole Smith story watching. I felt like that was that old man she married, and she was like, I can't resist him, but I have so much fun, and he was willing to take care of me. And so watching this whole film, that's how I felt. I mean, come on. A husband driven mad after his wife dies, and he's humping her dead body in a cemetery. Like, come on, man. And why did a guy who's like, I guess, it is one of Count Orlok's worshippers, did he really have to be naked and whipping himself? And he's like 90, little things like this are like, was this really that necessary? And why when Count Orlok drains you, he humps? It's like, not only is he humping this dude, it's like he's raping him. This is a new meaning of assault. So watching this movie, two other things that came to mind. I don't know why the actors look so young, so that while you're watching it, it feels like you're watching a high school production, and they're all in costumes and trying to be proper. So that took me out of it. And the nicest thing I can say about this movie is it looks great. The production design, the costumes, everything. But it's sort of like watching like a play in a museum. Everything's pretty, but there's no real heart to it. And maybe it's because we've seen this story so many times, since this is kind of a bootleg Dracula story, and that's its origins as a film anyway. But I think for all the gothic people, I think they'll really dig it. But for the rest of us, it's okay. It's a very pretty film. But I mean, I would say out of all the movies Robert Eggers has made, I don't think it's his worst, but I think it's his most mainstream, you could say. And so that is how I come across to Nosferatu. I don't know if I could quite give it a recommendation, but I give it a light recommendation. I'm not gonna stand behind it. How did you feel about Nosferatu, Andre?
I don't have too much to say. I mean, I feel like you said, I thought the cinematography looked great, the production design looked great. I just found it very slow and very dry. And yeah, it is very heavily sexual, especially when you get to the final act, but them having to do it before the sun goes up. Yeah, I was like kind of spent by then. I just was drifting off. So yeah, it's a low recommendation for me.
I'm like, well, you got to end it before sunlight because then, as they said in Sparkle, that's when you see the real though. And looking at Count Orlok, you know she did not want to see that. All them bones and all that dead skin. I still say, if you want to have fun with it, look at it as the Anna Nicole Smith story when you watch it. Next, we will talk about Netflix's latest concoction, The Electric State, directed by Joe and Anthony Russo, starring Millie Bobby Brown, Chris Pratt, Stanley Tucci, Jason Alexander. Look, is it okay?
Stanley Tucci.
Huh?
Stanley Tucci.
Stanley Tucci. I'm going to let you go first with The Electric State. So, what did you think of the Russo brothers' latest offering?
You know, I understand they were trying to do like this alternate 1990s, so they litter it with all the pop culture of the time, all the Nintendos and the, whatever movies and shows were big, like 90 to 95, maybe. And let me tell you something, I grew up in the 90s. It didn't look like any of that. Even if they were trying to fictionalize what they think it would look like if it was all futuristic and post-apocalyptic in some manner. Listen, this movie cost a record, what, $350 million?
Mm-hmm.
I'll give credit where credit is due. I do think that some of those effects do look like they're sold in at points. I'm not going to bash it on that technical level. That said, though, oof, the you know, you could have probably made like 5 other movies with that kind of money, and it probably would have been better storytelling than what the Russos tried to do here. I mean, come on, like, just silly acting. Chris Pratt just looks like he just doesn't wanna be there. Millie Bobby Brown is so desperate to get out of Stranger Things. The whole Mr. Peanut business is the up there. You have all these animatronics running around and acting like we have to be a little sympathetic to them. Like, what? We're going to war against some other machines here, and just I don't know what they were trying to do. I think they were trying to take from like a graphic novel or some.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I just was. I don't know why Netflix looked at that and said, "Oh, $350 million. You can't just get these guys a blank check just because they made 2 billion on Endgame." This was just bloated. It was not connectable. Stanley Tucci does nothing different as a villain. There's nothing interesting about him. Even the whole thing with Giancarlo Esposito, who's basically trying to be a badass from his desk at home and gets a conscience. I don't get what they were trying to do here. This was a waste of time, a waste of money, low recommendation from me. Actually, no recommendation.
No, I'm gonna say you gave it a recommendation.
Complete time and his resources. I just I don't understand why this was greenlit to begin with.
I agree with you. There are so many problems here. Like, okay, Millie Bobby Brown. I know a lot of people are talking about her face and she's looking older. Well, yes, she's a growing woman. So, but yeah, she is getting long in tooth to keep playing teenagers. But even if you separate that fact, she has nothing really to do, and she's the lead. you know, Chris Pratt give a Chris Pratt performance. Between him and Chris Evans, it just seems like they're under contract to these streaming services, which would explain why Coleman Domingo has a cameo for no real reason in this film. This feels like a Netflix studio film because you get the same actors either cameoing or playing small roles that you see in a lot of Netflix productions. The biggest surprise was that Jason Alexander was in
Yeah,
this.
that was odd.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy he's working, but yeah, it's like it came out of nowhere. And Holly Hunter, who has a minor role. This is a woman who was once nominated multiple times for Best Actress, and now she's limited to playing a news reporter who's at the beginning and the end of the film. This is clearly a paycheck role for Stanley Tucci. The nicest thing I could say is, I guess the 350 million went towards the effects, and those are impressive. That's the only nice thing I can say. I mean, it's better than that Zack Snyder sci-fi movie that Netflix had, Rebel Moon Part 1 and 2. So it's way better than that. But I don't know, was this supposed to be for families, kids, or adults?
That was the other problem too, was that he couldn't decide who are you really aiming this movie for, because on the surface, it looks like it's supposed to be a very Spielbergian type of action adventure movie for everybody. But then there's some points where it gets a little crude, it gets slightly violent, but not terribly violent. It just couldn't really decide who are you really aiming this for.
Exactly. Like, was there this whole backstory of Giancarlo Esposito sitting out in his shed? Maybe like he's such, I don't know, let's say meek in his home life that like him being this like desperado mercenary is how he gets his jollies or can feel tough in life.
Oh, and then Kikoi Kwan playing the doctor that couldn't save the kid, but they take him and make him comatose. And then, of course, spoiler alert, they kill him off later on. And yet he still has, like, I guess, part of his conscience in a fax machine or a copier. What?
Again, it's sci-fi gone mad. Maybe it made more sense on the page, like reading the graphic novel, but bringing it to the big screen, it's like you can't literally just take a story from the graphic novel. You have to make it more of a film. So you have to give like these little nuances that makes the audience interested. Whereas, in a graphic novel, you can tell whatever story you want pretty much.
I'll say like this. I was getting flashbacks of Five Nights at Freddy's.
Thank God I did not think of that movie at all during this movie. But I was just like, oh, are we really supposed to be like Mr. Peanut? Like he's a childhood toy of everybody in the audience? Like, okay. And like you could have made him any random robot. No one would have cared, Like I said, I don't blame any of the actors other than maybe Chris Pratt, because it's like you could try, create a new character, or a different one than you've played 20 times before. Especially for some that paid 350 million budget, I'm sure you were not paid badly, So I'm like you, I do not recommend this movie. I'm sorry. So that is definitely a skip on The Electric State. And next, we go to a movie that actually came out this year, Den of Thieves Pantera, or Den of Thieves Part 2, where now we have the character Big Nick chasing the one who got away, O'Shea Jackson Jr., now to Europe, where now he's hooked up with this whole new crew set to do another heist. Only now Big Nick is part of the crew because he's got all these problems back in the States and he can't, and, his force has basically been broken up. And now, he's tired of doing the things by the rules and not getting, I guess, his. And so now he wants to get his, or does he? Dun, dun, dun. Look, this isn't a film you go in thinking heavily about. This, I liked it, but obviously the first film is way better. Even for all its heat imitations, it is its own character. This one is more, I don't know, like the Fast and Furious. Once they started getting into the sequels and you knew no one couldn't die, it's like, okay, we're going to do this European style where there's a lot of flash, there's a lot of suspense, but nothing really quite sticks as far as character wise. You know everything that's going to happen. You know who's going to backstab each other. You know who's going to double cross you. But I will say it's enjoyable. And I like Gerard Butler in this mode than in his usual action roles. He needs to start taking roles Jason Statham turns down at this point. O'Shea Jackson, same thing. He's still the same character. We get to know a little bit more of his personality this time around. But my only complaint is this film lacks that grit of the first film and the characters that made it so memorable. Like, Here we get a female kind of love interest, but it's never consummated. You know, um, we deal with some things of the past, but it's like we're meant to forget. Oh, that whole old crew, 50 Cent, and all. And it's satisfying, but it's just not as good. I wouldn't mind a third, but I'm not upset if this is the last one either. And what did you think of Den of Thieves Pantera?
Well, I'd seen the first one. I thought it was just mildly entertaining. It was like kind of like a low rent version of Heat, not with the same gravitas, but still entertaining for the most part once you got to the big finale with the bank. This one, I agree. There's no real grit to it. It's just pretty much straight up like an Ocean's 11 type of heist movie. And Gerard Butler just appears more sleazy and drunk in this film for some reason. Maybe it's the beard and the long hair, and he just has to look burned out. Um, the only part I really enjoyed was like when they did the big heist. When they had to break into the building, go through that vault, go down the elevator shaft, not get caught by the cameras. I thought that stuff was pretty cool. Outside of that, I think it was just very like you said, like I didn't know where it was really gonna be going in terms of the dynamic with him and O'Shea Jackson, whether he was gonna turn on him or if they were just now gonna become pals for some reason. The thing with the girl, I thought Mead was gonna go somewhere, it doesn't. And just, really, it felt like this slow build up just to have all these little, bonding moments, like when they're, like, setting up the cars and they keep flipping the radio and the one guy ends up playing, like, some sort of classical music instead of playing, like, some grunge music and stuff. I mean, funny, but it's like, what's the point? This just actually tries to make the movie lighter and not with the sort of urban street level grit as the original, so this is another one that I was like, "Okay, I get why you did it because the original did pretty well on video, but this I can't recommend." I think it's just kind of like a passable flick. It's not anything I would really sit and watch again.
I give it a recommendation. I say if you're a fan of the first film, you're gonna like this one. The only problem is there's no big twist like the first film had. This film is just pretty much straightforward. But I do recommend. But Yeah, it's just not as. It's to me. I really enjoyed the first one. This one, I was just like, it's okay. Um, so now we move on to our last film, which is Bong Joon Ho's, or whose Mickey 17, based on the novel Mickey 7, which is basically about a guy who signs up to get out off of planet Earth to get away from some gangsters. So he signs up basically to be cloned to go on all these either dangerous missions or questionable missions to see, is it safe or the effect some disease will have on him. And of course, his character ends up falling in love. And one of his clones is supposed to die, but ends up not dying. And now there are two of them running around, which is against space rules. And the thing with this film is it tries to be satire, and it also tries to be a little bit of an ensemble piece, but the side characters aren't that interesting. And while Tony Collette is great, why is he the villain and not Mark Ruffalo? Mark Ruffalo, I don't know what film he's in because he's really laying it on thick. We know who you're supposed to be. We get it. But this was like a Saturday night level performance, like this is more spoof than actual acting. It's, um, Naomi Aki, I guess she was serviceable, Stephen Yun. But again, they have such you don't really get an impression. They're playing types more than actual people. And one of the things I understand there's this big backstory. We have to understand why he ran away from Earth. But does it really need to take 20 to 30 minutes of screen time to explain this rather than just starting the film? This is a disappointing considering the talents involved, especially the director. Um, but then again, I didn't like Okja, his movie for Netflix either. So, not too much of a big surprise, but I expected better than this. The one thing this film has is Robert Pattinson. Yeah, I think he is phenomenal as the clones, but again, while he's good, I wish he had a better film to be in. And so I give it a very mild recommendation. It does have some originality and thoughts, but there's also so much that could have been done better or made this tighter. So that's why I believe he did have director's cut, and I believe he did indulge himself more with this film. Whereas there's a lot of stuff that could probably have been tightened up when it comes to this film. Andre, what did you think of Mickey 17?
So watching the trailer, I expected Edge of Tomorrow, and then once I saw the movie, I could see the Starship Troopers influence with the aliens and the whole deal with, oh, we can't harm them, but we have to harm them anyway because they're affecting the planet. Everything is so on the nose with this, especially Ruffalo. We know who he's channeling, and it's no surprise. Pattinson, I agree, is probably the best thing about it, and he definitely deserved a better script than what he was given here. He wasn't getting any Twilight vibes, thankfully. It was just a really good, solid performance. Stephen Yeun was wasted. I don't even know why he was in this to begin with, because it seemed like he had a certain importance when we first see him, and then later he just disappears for most of the movie and then pops up, and then it's like, well, why are you even still here? And you're a far better actor than what the script has given you. And same thing with Naomi Ackie. I'm like, why is she even into Robert Pattinson in this case? I never really understood that. And Toni Collette, I agree, should have been the villain, not Mark Ruffalo, because there could have been like a Macbeth type of thing going on there.
Mm-hmm.
Effects were okay. Production design I really liked. Very claustrophobic. The whole, the interior corridors that they built, and that's really it. I just didn't find that. Not that I was expecting a fast-paced movie, but just like kind of what happened with me with Parasite, I was just drifting off at points because there were just parts that were a little too padded and going a little too long, like the scene at the dinner table when he gets invited, that
Mm-hmm.
the president, then the whole thing with the daughter and the whole hyperventilating. I mean, that went way too long for me because I didn't know where that was supposed to be going. And then trying to throw everybody off at the end. This is like the Spielberg problem. It had too many damn endings,
Yes.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Just what it looked like, okay, the situation's resolved. Then we have to have this other scene that turns out to be a fake out with, well, I'm not even going to get into it, but it involves Toni Collette and something she tries to undo. But yeah, I think the director is incredibly talented, deserved the Oscar when he did. But this is another Oka. This really just didn't really hit it for me. I would give it a mild recommendation because I think there's some good things about it, some good thought, but it's just sometimes with these scripts, and this is the problem with Hollywood now, everything is so on the nose. There's no subtlety.
Well, I mean, I think it's interesting. Well, not the subject matter, but this is one of those films that was supposed to be a big deal this year. His first film really since Parasite. And then, it kind of whimpers in the theater. And that feels like that is so far been the theme of this year when it comes to movies. Nothing has been a must see or where you felt like this was so worth going to see in the theater. It all feels like the offerings so far this year have been basically streaming for the big screen, like stuff you could definitely could have waited for, and then the studios wonder why aren't people going to see movies? It's like, look at what you're offering them. And, I understand. Look, people watch streaming mainly because if they can't afford to see what's coming out in theaters, but also usually streaming is stuff. It's sort of like going to the video store. It's like, yes, you have your blockbusters, but then you have your made for video stuff. Most people watching streaming expect made for streaming stuff. They shouldn't have to pay, prices to go to these big blockbuster movies, and you're giving them basically B movie crap. Stuff that, yeah, original, but there's not. It's original to a certain extent. Like you said, it's too on the nose. It doesn't go strange places that would make it stand out from the rest. And that is why I feel a lot of people now are maybe more staying home. And it's like, I understand when it comes to IP driven stuff, you're thinking, okay, well, it was a hit once, it should be a hit again. But again, the whole thing is everybody's moving. It's like a machine. Everything's moving forward, but nobody's stopping to say, wait, but, question anything or considering that. And I think that's why movies are just right now so far disappointing. And, even though WB at the time when they greenlit all these movies, like Mickey 17 was like, oh, we want to be more behind filmmakers in their original vision. Unfortunately, I don't know if it's the filmmakers that chose these projects, but obviously they're not, they're more driven by, hey, I can get them to fund this $100 million production rather than this is a statement or my next movie where I really want to say something, because that's what this feels like. This feels like if a studio wasn't willing to pay for it, would this really have been his next dream passion project? Probably not. So that's what this movie reeks of. It's like, it's sort of like you're not putting your all into the game. You're like, I'm playing, but I'm not trying that hard as much as I would for something I'm more passionate about. It's sort of like, with this, after I score 20 points, I'm just gonna go sit down. And rather than, no, we as a team gotta win this game. So it just felt like this film was a regular season game and he wasn't playing like he's in the playoffs. That's how I would describe this film. But if you just want to go see a regular game, go see this movie. But if you want some passion on display, playoff style, this is not the film for you. So we have reached the end of this episode's business. But as you know, we always have unfinished business. And I'm going to ask you folks, have you seen The Batman? If not, why not? Because it's fucking awesome. Andre, what movie would you recommend for the folks?
Have you seen Tombstone? If not, why not? Because it is fucking awesome.
Agree. And that ends this episode, and we bid you adieu.
If you like this review, please be sure to like and hit subscribe to be alerted to new episodes in the future.